Well, good morning. Woke up this morning and found that some reason my eye is swelling up. It doesn't hurt or anything. I don't have any other symptoms. No idea why it's doing that. That's the fun thing about adventures. You never know what's going to happen. You know? One day you might get a beautiful view of the mountain. The next day your eye might swell up.
Welcome to Cranking It, yeah, we cranking it. Welcome to Cranking It, yeah, we cranking it.
As I left behind Cusco, I got on the highway and was treated to long, straight paved roads.
Well, 132. I guess we're really cranking. The road is flat, it's nice and paved. I guess this is what it's like to be back out of the dirt roads in the high mountains. I think I'm gonna get a hospedaje, see if there's one around. I actually don't know. But yeah, typical Peruvian town.
In some towns, I noticed an odd trend. Strange figures appeared, sometimes hung from poles, sometimes from signs. I asked around, and apparently they're warnings for thieves, like a scarecrow but for criminals. Other public art was a bit more appealing. This wall has a mural for each of the local towns. After a couple days of riding, I arrived at Lake Titicaca. I decided to ride the less populated northern coast to avoid traffic. Lake Titicaca is considered the highest navigable lake in the world and the largest freshwater lake in South America.
So I'm here at the border town of Tilali in Peru. And the plan today is to cross into Bolivia. It's always pretty exciting. I hope, I don't know how this whole eye situation is going to affect matters. You think they might reject me because I'm sick or something? The border with Bolivia is always a bit, I heard it's one of the more tricky ones. You have to pay like $160 for a 30-day visa or something like that. But I guess I'll give it a shot anyway. See what happens.
Alright, so I'm headed out of Tilali now. My eye feels a little better. Still definitely annoying. The owner of the hotel that I was at had a few cures for me. One was blowing cigarette smoke in my face. The other seemed a bit more reasonable. Basically got some herbs from the market, boiled them, and after letting it cool, wiped a bit of the water on my face. Felt good, smells good. Maybe it'll help with the inflammation. Then I went to the clinic, and they told me it was an infection, and they gave me some eye drops. And now I'm headed off towards the border. Hopefully Bolivia lets me in, despite my funny looking eye.
I made my way to the border and headed to immigration control. Fortunately, by the time I got to immigration, my eye was mostly back to normal.
Alright, we got there. We're in Bolivia. That was definitely the hardest border to cross so far. I was right about that. Besides the $160, they needed proof of onward travel, they needed proof of booking of a hotel, a reservation of a hotel, they needed a bank statement prove that I got money. And they even needed a couple little passport photos to glue to the application. So basically just had to go back into town, find a print shop, get some internet, book a hotel, reserve a ticket, a bus ticket that I'm not gonna use. Eventually they gave me the visa, and it's all good. Through the other side, into Bolivia. It's a new country. Not as big as Peru. Feel good, making progress. Let's do it.
I continued along the lakeshore until I reached La Paz. La Paz is considered the highest administrative capital in the world, but to get downtown, I first needed to descend a steep and windy street. The next day, I headed back to the highway. I was worried I would have to climb all the way back up that steep street, but fortunately, La Paz has a unique system of public transportation. For the price of a couple extra tickets, I was able to take my bike into a gondola and ride it over the city and back up the hill to the highway. Riding the main highway through Bolivia wasn't my favorite. Apparently, due to an economic crisis in the country, there's a fuel shortage, which resulted in massive lines running down the length of the highway at every gas station. Farther from the city, traffic started to decrease. Eventually, I turned onto a smaller highway and traffic was reduced to a trickle, maybe in part due to the fuel shortage. As I headed towards Bolivia's salt flats, the terrain became even flatter. Every afternoon, thunderstorms would roll through, and without the terrain to obstruct them, I could watch them approach and pass overhead.
Well, I'm a few days into Bolivia now, and it's definitely a different experience. I'm up here on the Altiplano, and definitely is worthy of the name. It's high and it's flat. I can see for kilometers in every direction. There's no trees. There's just the sky and the flat terrain. I'm pretty happy to be off of the main highway. It was fast, but there was just so much traffic. I'm kind of tired of breathing in all that diesel smoke. I'm headed now towards the Salar de Uyuni, the biggest salt flat on the planet, and the plan is to ride across it.
One night, in search of somewhere to shelter from the storms, I stopped at an old ghost town, which was home to an abandoned stone cathedral. The front door was locked, but a small door along the side had fallen out and allowed access into the dark interior. It was a bit too spooky inside, so I ended up pitching my tent in the small capilla out front. It was the perfect place to watch the storm pass, which bathed the cathedral in a warm glow and made a rainbow appear. The next day, I continued on my way, through through more flat, open land and under a wide blue sky. Eventually, I reached my turnoff.
Alright, I've left behind the pavement once again. And I'm all stocked up on food and water. And I guess I'm going in. Head towards the salt flats.
It was surprising to me how much riding over the salt flats seemed like traveling over water. Towns were often built on the shores of the flats, and long tracks led out like docks through the muddy transition zone and out onto the open salt. In the distance, crews and trucks worked at harvesting the salt. As I got deeper into the salt, I had to use my compass and distant islands as landmarks to make sure my heading was correct.
Alright, well I made it across the first salar. Not too hard, a bit bumpy, and a lot of different surfaces. You know, sometimes it felt like slushy snow, and other times it was like sand. Sometimes it was pretty smooth. Only a little bit of water, but well, the result is that my foot got pretty crispy. Check it out. And also my bike has a nice little layer of salt as well. And that was the smaller salar, so tomorrow and the next day I guess I'll be crossing more like 50 to 70 kilometers worth of salt flat, so hopefully the bike is okay and I can make it across. Last night I got to land and I camped, and today I'm just crossing this little strip of land before starting my main crossing on the Salar de Uyuni. Probably make it about halfway across tonight and then camp on an island, I think. Hopefully it won't be too windy. I can find shelter there, and then tomorrow finish it out. Alright, well, I'm out in the middle of the Salar de Uyuni now, and it's a pretty incredible experience. Right now it's completely silent. I'm surrounded in all directions by this really weird geometrical formation. There's just nothing out here. Way out into the horizon you can see some of the islands that poke out of the salt. The one that I'm headed for right now is the Fish Island. But distances out here are kind of weird. They're a little bit warped since the ground is completely flat. Definitely a pretty weird place. I'm definitely glad that I made this detour. You know, this route is pretty popular with cyclists, and I can definitely see why. It's absolutely unworldly. All right, I made it to the island. It's pretty nice. I guess I'll look around for a place to camp and then finish my crossing of the salt flats tomorrow morning.
I had arrived a couple hours early, so I took a short hike up to the top of the island. The summit offered amazing views out over the salt. It really looked like a sea of white water that had been frozen in time.
Some of these rock formations are pretty interesting. It almost looks like coral.
As the sun set, I set up my tent, alone on the island, surrounded by nothing but salt and sky. The next morning, I left Fish Island and headed to the mainland. This stretch was much more frequented by tours, so the track I followed was much more established and smooth. There was no more standing water or weak surfaces.
So after the salt flats of Uyuni, I headed to the city of Uyuni and took a rest day there. Got stocked up on groceries and water, washed off my bike, all that salt crusted on there.
From there, it was another couple days along a highway with varied surfaces.
And now I'm headed along the last part of Bolivia. It's a route that goes through the Altiplano, kind of backcountry. It's characterized by wind, sand, and washboard. I think this might be the last hard, high elevation road that I do on this trip. But it's supposed to be really beautiful as well. Really nice high elevation, colorful lakes, flamingos, vicuñas, and even some geothermal activity, so we'll see if we can catch some of that.
The other notable feature of this route was the high number of tourists.
Likewise.
What's your name?
Alex.
Nice to meet you, Alex. My name is Alan.
Alan.
Yeah, I am Reza from Iran. I love you.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
of course.
I don't mind though. The reason there are so many tourists around here is because it's such a beautiful place. I ended up taking a detour to ride alongside the Laguna Colorada, a famous attraction known for its striking red color and numerous flamingos.
Well, I'm riding by the Laguna Colorado now. It's alright. You know, the lake, I mean, you can definitely tell that it's red. And there are some flamingos, but the road is pretty rough and it's all just sand.
The wind continued for the rest of the evening, and I ended up having to push through the sand. The next day, I headed up, away from the lake, and into the hills. At the top, I got to visit the Sol de la Mañana geysers. On the other side of the hills, the landscape became even more stark. I was entering an area appropriately named the Salvador Dali Desert. colors of the hills and the sand in this area were just surreal. As I neared the border with Chile, the number of tourists dropped, and I found myself alone with the bright sandy mountains. As soon as I crossed the border, I was back on pavement. I headed west, towards the town of San Pedro de Atacama. The road into town was one of the longest downhills of the trip so far. For about 40 kilometers, I descended about 2,500 meters down into the desert town, where I am now. Soon, I'll have to head back up that hill to cross into Argentina, where I'll get on the iconic Route 40 and follow it south along the east side of the Andes.
Well, thank you for watching episode 15. It feels good to be in Chile. I actually have been to Chile before. Way back in 2006 and 2007, I was a Rotary exchange student here. And this is the first South American country that I've ever been to, and the only one before starting this trip. So it kind of feels like coming back home. Seeing the flag, seeing the food, the accents. It's really nice. And it's also one of the last countries. So basically all that I have left on this trip is to ride down Chile and Argentina. Just 2 more countries. They just happen to be really long countries. So it's not quite over yet, but it does kind of feel like I'm in the home stretch. So yeah, feeling good. Definitely a little bit less stressed about the timeline. In previous episodes, I was worrying about that, but I think I got this. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, and especially my Crank Tier supporters:
Judy Friesem, Dan Phillips, Granberry Mickle, Kate and Mike Glasser, Jane Hilton, Jody Kojima, Michael Barker, Marion Hinman, D. Axelrod, Holly and Ed, and Heaven Dubois. If you'd like to help support the channel, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps the channel keep growing, and feels good to get likes and subscribes. Otherwise, if you're feeling super generous and you'd like to help out financially, go on over to patreon.com/crankinit. You get early access to videos as well as a map of the progress of my route so far. If that sounds good to you, then check it out, and thank you.